This is the Coaching Leader Podcast, a podcast about coaching, leadership, and leading through coaching. And here's your host, Scott Gress.
Well, welcome to the Coaching Leader Podcast. And by now, I hope that you've become familiar with the LCMS Coaching Network, where we work to encourage the body of Christ in the use, growth, and spread of coaching so that people can live out their calling in Christ. So if you're looking to network with other coaches, if you want to learn more about coaching, and also if you're looking to find a coach, a good International Coaching Federation certified coach, you can go to the directory there at lcmscoaching.com. Well, today we're pleased to interview Brent Hafele, incredibly gifted man who works with CEOs and leaders of leaders and is connected with VibrancyUnlocked.com, where you can learn more about him. And he talks about coaching and what it really is. And he's so clear about it and so helpful. And he talks about how it's a wonderful skill that can be used by leaders and managers to increase people's ownership, to empower others, to engage them, to grow and develop people so that your work, your purpose, your business can grow and develop. Well, I'm sure you'll enjoy his very clear and engaging communication style. So here's my interview with Brent Hafele.
Welcome to the Coaching Leader. I'm so pleased to have with us today Brent Hafele, the president and coach to CEOs. And his background is an ICF certified coach, an author, speaker, husband, father, believer, and we're blessed to have you with us today. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you've got a rich history in a lot of things: philanthropy, development, consulting, and coaching. What's your story? How did you get to this place where you're serving some people in key positions?
Oh my goodness. So my story actually starts way back in college.
Okay.
And so I got burned out in my first semester of college. I actually wanted to be pre-med, wanted to be a physician. And I got burned out in the first semester, and I saw a poster for an internship at Walt Disney World through the Disney college program. And so I got placed in the Disney College program. I was very, very blessed. I got placed to work at the Disney Institute, which is where corporate America sends their best and their brightest to learn the Disney way. Mm. And while I was working in food and beverage, so I was doing banquets and I was doing delivery and some other stuff, but I had the opportunity to sit in the back of the room of these Disney Institute training sessions. And there was, I just was mesmerized by these Disney trainers. Like, you get to do this as a job. This is incredible. And so I came back to school. I changed my major to organizational communication with a minor in leadership development. And I didn't look back. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with leaders for my career. Mm. Well, when I graduated, it was in 2002 during the dot-com bust. And not only were people not hiring people with my degree, but they were firing everyone with my degree. Ooh. And so there was nothing out there. And I had applied to a position at a homeless shelter called, the position was a volunteer/development coordinator. And I thought, I can work with volunteers and I can see how homeless people could need some development.
Sure.
That is when I learned that development in the nonprofit sector is code for fundraising. Mm. So I took about a 20-year detour in nonprofit sector, about 9 years working in a homeless shelter, and then as an executive director of a free medical clinic, and then running my own consulting practice, selling that to a practice in North Carolina, working in that practice, which was a national firm, working with nonprofits all over the United States, and everything from your small local rescue mission or private school to major international ministries like Compassion International or Crew. And so had a lot of really amazing opportunities there. And it was during that time that I kind of fell in love with coaching, and I realized that I consulted from a coaching perspective. And now I'm at Vibrancy Unlocked, my firm, and having a great time working with CEOs.
Fantastic. Yeah, we call this podcast The Coaching Leader, and our listeners are often, in this nonprofit world, whether they're pastors or ministry leaders or,
Absolutely.
but also other profit leaders. What is, it's important probably to do a little repeat for new listeners or for any of us, really. What is this thing called coaching, and how does it compare to other helping skills? How would you answer that?
Yeah, well, coaching is a thought partnership. It's an opportunity to be thought partners with the coachee or the person being coached. And when you're working with your client as a coach, your goal or your job is to draw out their expertise. So when you compare it to consulting really, the consultant is the expert. The consultant will march in or ride in on their white steed, and they come in, and we know the definition of a consultant is someone from 50 miles away with a briefcase or a backpack in these days. But the consultant rides in and says, "This is what your problem is. This is how to fix it, and this is what you need to do." And the expertise, the locus of expertise, is in the consultant. You are hiring the consultant to fix your problem. Coaching, it's the opposite. The coach assumes that the client is the expert. And Scott, if I was to be quote unquote your consultant, that would be in some ways not authentic, because I have let's see, what time is it? I have about 15 minutes of experience with Scott Gress. You have a lifetime of experience with Scott Gress. So who am I to tell you what you should think, believe, or do?
That's a good way to think of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So as
helpful.
a coach, when we're working with individuals, we are helping them to navigate. We believe that they have all the skills, all the abilities, they have all the tools that they need. It's just that they need a process. They need a partner to help them draw that out. And so as a coach, I ask a lot of questions. I share observations and insights that they may have. I may share a metaphor, or I may share a model even with them, and then say, what do you think of that? Does it apply? Does it not? I have one client right now who she said, I'm tired of, she came up with the metaphor herself, but she's like, I feel like I'm a bricklayer and I'm focusing so much on the mortar, but I'm not focused on the bricks. And I'm like, what does the bricks represent? The work that I need to do. And the mortar is the stuff anyone else can do. And I'm like, okay, so we've been running with that metaphor for a while. And those are the types of things that a coach can really help with. Now, coaching also sometimes gets confused with counseling or therapy.
Sure.
And the distinction there is counseling or therapy often assumes a pathology of some sort or something is wrong. Coaching assumes that things are right and that there is health. So that's one key distinction. We're not looking for, Scott, how can I fix you? It's how can I help you into a better reality. So it's not a fixing situation. The other element with this is that therapy is often about bringing someone from the past into the present. And coaching is really about bringing someone from the present into the future.
Well, you touched on something there that I think is important to emphasize, and it's all about the question of who could benefit from coaching. Is it this remedial thing because you're the underperforming employee, or is it something else? Who's a good candidate for coaching then?
Well, I'm interested in your response as well, Scott. So I'm going to ask you the same question back. But
Okay.
I would argue that it is not a remedial thing. It could be,
Mm-hmm.
but it shouldn't be. It should be something where the client wants to be coached, first of all, because if the client isn't more than an equal partner in that conversation or that relationship, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, thou shalt coaching is not really it's not really effective. But coaching is, you know, Michael Jordan had a coach.
Sure. There you go.
You
It says
know,
a lot.
Bart Starr. I'm a Packers fan.
Oh no.
Bart Starr had the great Vince Lombardi. You know, Saint Vincent to be his coach, and so when you look at various different, I mean, all sorts of folks around the world have coaches, and it's not because there's an issue; it's because there's potential.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the the kind of folks that um, are good coach clients are those who are eager to get better, but they're just a
Mhm.
little bit stuck because they've read the books, they've listened to the podcast, they've, searched the internet, they've talked to their friends, and somehow they just know that there's something more that they can do, but they just can't
Yep.
quite put their finger on it.
Hmm.
Does that say anything to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember a specific client who I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach in
Mm-hmm.
addition to being an ICF certified coach or International Coaching Federation coach. But in the Clifton Strengths, there's a strength called self assurance. And self assurance, people high in self assurance are confident in their own decisions and in their own direction. They have this, when it's raw, it's ego and arrogance, but when it's mature, it is this confidence that's very calming to teams and calming to other people, and frankly it propels people. It is influencing to others.
Yeah.
And this individual had high confidence or had high self-assurance but was very timid and very unsure. And so we started walking through this and saying, well, why would the assessment show this? Is the assessment wrong?
Mm,
And that's definitely a possibility. Any assessment that you take, there's no way any assessment can completely capture an individual. Just can't do it.
sure.
So is the assessment wrong was one of the questions. And we started walking through this and telling stories back to even when she was a child of where she had confidence that other people didn't have. And it's like, oh, wait, maybe this is true. So why aren't you confident now?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
And
good one.
that created some opportunities of being able to say, when you're not confident, something is off. Because
Mm,
you should naturally be confident. You should naturally be, because that's part of one of your talents.
yeah.
And that was I talk with my clients about two different types of insights, one of them being confirmational insights. Those are like nuanced things. Oh yeah, that's a good reminder.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that little nuance is helpful. I didn't think of it that way, but that little twist, that's good. I'll make that 1% change. And then there's revelational insights. And those are like the whoa, that changes everything. And for those revelational insights, this was one of those revelational insights for her, where she looked
Beautiful.
at it and she's like, wow, when I'm not confident, something is off and I need to figure out what that is.
Hmm. And it can change your world and the trajectory of your life. Beautiful.
And it has. It
Ah,
has. Let me give you one other quick example that
sure.
is really fun. And this is one that this happened to me just recently. I had a client that and I'm going to change the names here because we want to protect confidentiality, and that's
Sure.
part of the ethical code of being an internationally certified coach. But gentleman's name, I'll call him Carlton. And I said, okay, so Carlton, but by the way, do you prefer Carlton, Carl? Do you prefer something else? And he says, I prefer Tom.
Okay.
He even filled out his like coaching form from me with the name Carlton. And so I'm like, Tom, okay, help me understand this. He says, well, my friends call me Tom. My family calls me Tom. And I had an aunt that right before I was born wanted me to be named Tom. And my parents named me Carlton. Well, she just decided she was going to call me Tom regardless of what my parents named me. And it stuck. And she said, even my parents now call me Tom. And I said, okay, so why are you Carlton then at work? And this guy was struggling with confidence and motivation. And he says, well, because that's what's on my social security card, and that's, you know, the legal application and the I-9 and the other stuff. And it's too much work to explain that I'm actually prefer to be called Tom. And so we spent like a half an hour talking about what it would look like for him to be called Tom at work. And one of the things that he said was profound. He said it's like Carlton is like a a sweater that's too tight, telling me what I'm not, instead of something that fits right, telling me what I am. And I'm like, what would it look like to change your name at work? And he's like, we went through that for a while, and he came up with something really awesome. And I was so proud of him. He talked to his team, and he feels more confident at work now. And his email is now tom@fabulouscompany.com. And so he's showing up with greater confidence and motivation because he's being reminded of, oh yeah, you're Tom, you're not Carlton. So yeah.
Well, for people who might be listening who think, it's kind of a silly example. Hey, I've been going by my middle name my whole life.
Okay.
So I can kind of get that. You know, your identity is just something a little different than what's on your social security card.
Angus Scott Gress just wasn't doing it for you, huh?
Well, Scott's my middle name. Yeah. So,
I don't know if your first name is Angus or not, and you don't have to reveal that,
but it's not Carlton.
All right, there you go. That's fair. But a name is important. I mean,
absolutely,
that's your calling card. That's who.
Mm-hmm.
That's an identity, and something as simple as that can hold you back. And this is a professional executive, someone who has achieved a lot, but every time he's called Carlton, he's reminded of what he's not, and he feels a little bit like a fraud, and that affects you.
It does. It's got some drag on your progress and momentum. Well, let me go to this kind of the next step, I think. You were telling me that last fall you taught a seminar called Manager as Coach to a group of 75 business leaders.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated to hear more about that. First of all, what is a manager as coach?
Well, I chose the word manager in the title simply because the market would resonate with it, because they know what a manager is. What I really meant was leader as coach.
Sure.
So just so that there's clarity there, because there's a difference between manager and leader. But the manager as coach, the concept behind that was really that our workforce, our society has changed so drastically in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years, in the last 50 years. Management is not like it was in the Mad Men days of the 1950s, 1960s advertising world, where the boss was the boss and was almost omniscient, knowing all.
Yeah.
These days, our environment is so complex, and it's changing so quickly. And there are specialties of specialties of specialties. One of my clients, and I can share this name, Justin Vaco from Dialogue Marketing. In fact, he probably wants me to share this name. He is a videographer and a marketing professional that focuses on videos that are no longer than about 60 seconds on average.
Okay.
He does online videos for YouTube and for Instagram and for TikTok. That's all he does, is these short little videos. He doesn't do, I mean, he's a specialist of a specialist of a specialist. And these days, how can any one leader, any one manager say, well, I know about all of the fields and I know about all of the stuff? There's just no way that that's possible. And that's where coaching, leadership as coaching is so critical.
Yeah. Yeah. So what can you give us a little more understanding there of how coaching skills are important then to leadership?
Absolutely. So a big part of leadership is empowering others to take on ownership
Mm-hmm.
of their work, ownership
Yeah.
of their area. And as we learn more about Generation X or not the millennial, no one cares about Generation X. Um, I'm in Generation X, so that's
Okay, fair enough.
but as we think more about millennials and as we think more about anyone in Generation X that just heard that, I feel your pain. But in millennials and especially now the new Gen Z generation, they really care about the why, and they really
Mm-hmm.
care about having ownership and having some autonomy, and that's really important in this age. And and so if everything is that directive style of management, you will do this, you'll do this, this is the goals, this is how this will be done. Um, it's often demotivating to today's workforce. And it's the type of workforce that almost pushes people out the door. Um, uh, is anti-retention in a number
Yeah.
of ways. And so leader as coach, oh, go ahead.
Well, the kind of folks I run into, and I coach a lot of pastors, and they work with folks of the younger generation, and they're wondering, gee, what am I doing wrong? And there's this fear. I don't want to be that guy who's
Mhm.
barking orders and
Yep.
being very directive and telling them what to do. But on the other hand, they frustrate me, and I
Mhm.
find myself falling into
Yeah.
that behavior. And so sometimes the only alternative that's in their mind is I'll just be very passive and okay, whatever you want to do. But that's not good either.
Hmm.
Um, so it sounds like you're coming up with an alternative, or maybe even something in between. Am I tracking
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah. The and I think there's a side conversation too, because there's a lot of bad things being said about millennials and about Gen Zs and things, and the youngest generation always gets beat on. I mean, the boomers were terrible. I mean, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, each one, oh, this generation's terrible. I actually think Gen Z is really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about them. They care a lot, and they care enough to want some ownership in it. They care enough enough to be passionate about making a difference in the world and not just making a buck. And so those are important things. That's a
And they're not going
cool
to
thing.
and they're not going to waste their time with somebody who's not going to partner with them in a healthy ways.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly right. And so the leader as coach concept or the manager as coach concept really in when someone comes to you and says, I want to do this or I have a problem, instead of saying, oh, this is what you should do, or I will approve this, you respond to them with questions.
Mm.
Oh, so what makes this an important proposal now? Why is this urgent? What might the what might happen if we go this direction? Give me three different results that could possibly happen. It's going to succeed, it's going to be mediocre, it's going to fail. What do those three look like?
Mm-hmm.
What would influence it if it failed? What would influence it to win? Who might be on board? Who might need to be on board in order for this to be successful? Who
And
might
I'm
you need to ask to get more information? And what you're doing there is you're actually doing two things that are really
okay.
powerful. One is you are building ownership in the individual that like, oh, I need this to succeed because it's on my shoulders, not my boss's. Because as soon as I tell you, Scott, or whatever your name is, Scott, I want you to do this and do it this way and get it done that way. If it fails and you followed all the instructions, it's on Scott
It's not
or
my
it's on
fault.
me. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
your
not my
fault.
fault.
It's my fault. But if I ask you the questions and you give me the answers, and I'm like, okay, this is your deal. Go do it. You own that. So that's the first thing is you're creating ownership. And when there's ownership, there's engagement.
Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
the second thing you're doing is you are actually developing thoughtful practitioners.
Yeah.
At some point, they're going to start coming to you with those questions already answered. At some point, they might not come to you at all. They might just do the whole process themselves and do the work and then come see you and say, hey, boss, I did this. And you can celebrate with them.
Yeah, you're developing them
Correct.
along the way. What a beautiful thing. Yeah. And
But
you're
if
not
I do
in,
all the thinking as the boss, or if you do all the thinking as the boss, how do they learn? How do they grow? Purely by observation? Yeah, you can learn and grow that way. But we all know that trial and error, failure, experience, um, reaching out to others, frankly, having your back against the wall are some of the best teachers in life.
absolutely. And it's not like you're interrogating them. You're like you started out the podcast with, you're a thinking partner. You're
Mm-hmm.
helping them. You're in their corner and you want
Mm-hmm.
them to succeed. And so there's that tone there. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, so we're talking about
Let me share one
developing
other
people.
thing
Go ahead. Go
really,
ahead.
really quickly about this leader as coach thing. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just thought of this. So I've been reading, and the book is it's an excellence in coaching model. It's right over there. I can see it, but I'm not going to go grab it. It's by Robert Hicks, and he talks about in the book that there are two elements of coaching. One is providing support, and the other one is providing challenge.
Mm.
And support is the challenge is, well, what about this? And what about this? Or and how is this going to work? And did you think about this? And what does that look like? And asking good questions to be able to draw out their expertise. Support is, I believe you can do this. And if you fail, I've got your back.
Yep. Yep.
And support, one of the things that Hicks says is support without challenge is collusion. So that whole, I'm going to be passive and I'm going to be back and I'm just going to whatever, you do your thing. That's collusion. Just allowing the situation. And in challenge without support, I don't know what the opposite of that is, but that's almost that like really, that's I don't know, great negativity or something. I got to come up with a term for challenge without support. He doesn't define that, but I think there's an element of there being able to draw out what's great in your people, and that's what the manager's coach is about.
Challenge without support kind of sounds like a bully to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Oh, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, and being a leader or a manager who coaches might not come naturally from your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that would be the kind of person who would benefit from coaching so that they can begin to live into what they haven't necessarily experienced, but what they can learn to do
Mm-hmm.
through a coaching relationship to be a better leader and to be a better manager. What would you add to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the best ways to become a coach is to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
Experience the process. And I've been through a lot of coaching. I have two coaches right now that I work with on a regular basis, David Cook and Kim Ryder, and they pour into me and they ask questions and they challenge me and they encourage me and they draw out that thought process and that expertise. And I'm really grateful for both of them, and I'm becoming better coaches because of them.
Absolutely.
At the same time, there are some techniques to coaching. And truth be told, Scott, coaching is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
You're a coach.
Mm-hmm.
It takes work, and it may take more work than just giving the answer up front. In fact, it will take more work up front.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Thank you
it will
for
be a
saying that.
lot less work on the back end
Yeah.
because you have thoughtful people who will be loyal to you and will stay, instead of this revolving door of people who resent you, do the job in a half, I don't know if I can say the other part of it, way on this podcast. Some podcasts, we all know the word,
Yeah.
but in a backwards way, and just go through the paces.
Yeah, you described it beautifully. You know the name Chad Hall. He
Yes,
he puts it this
he was
way.
my mentor coach, by the way.
Beautiful. He's been my coach. He says he puts it this way: you go slow in order to move fast.
Correct. Yep.
That's
Yep.
beautiful. Well, I've
Absolutely.
really appreciated the time. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap it up for the day?
Absolutely. So, I run a firm called Vibrancy Unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically like to work with CEOs or people who are in that CEO role. So whether it be executive director, managing partner, even senior pastors I've worked with, but those that are in that CEO, that apex leader role, and helping them to live and lead more vibrantly. And so if this conversation resonates with you and you're one of those individuals, I'd encourage you to just reach out. My website is vibrancyunlocked.com. So
Yeah, and your contact information is there, email.
contact information is all there, and I even have I just started a new program recently where I help CEOs to reclaim 8 hours of every week within 90 days. And so if you find yourself way too busy, that's a great time to reach out, because I'm all about killing busy.
Where
So,
do I sign?
hey, let's do it. Reach out to me.
Hey, thanks so much, Brent.
This was a
Blessings on
joy.
your
Thank
work.
you.
All right, take care.
Well, thank you, Brent, and thank you for listening. Let me know how I can be helpful and supportive in your leadership development and discovery process. Just go to scottgress.com. And in the meantime, we'll catch you next time on The Coaching Leader.